Style is an aspect of art design that I feel often goes underappreciated. Understanding what your vision is and what the right tools are required in order to fulfill that style are absolutely necessary. I'm a gamer, so a woman's touch still remains a mystery to me, but I'm intimately familiar with the wetness of Urukai birth slime.
What the actual fuck did you just say to me right now?
Let me rephrase that. What I'm familiar with is the visceral style of The Lord of the Rings. Well-written characters and a compelling story are great and all, but without an identity, without a sense of personality, you can quickly become as forgettable as those fucking Hobbit movies. These movies have fucking major issues, but my problem with them isn't just the shameless CGI, it's the fact that it's almost all CGI. Instead of CGI being used as a tool, it was used as the fix-all-problems solution. But that original texture of Middle-earth, is gone as a result. The visceral appearance of the Hobbit movies is a shallow imitation of what came before. What they stylistically end up being are just more movies. Just more movies without a sense of personality or identity. And once you lose that, you've lost me. I really like Far Cry 2. It's sort of been forgotten, but it's still a game that I'd recommend playing. I don't want to sound like one of those guys that say, they don't make them like that anymore, but I mean, that statement could not be more appropriate here. Far Cry 2 has a real sense of personality. I haven't played another first-person shooter that directed this much hostility at the player. I hear the Stalker games are up there in that same sort of category, possibly even more. But I'm a console peasant, so I gotta work with what I got. I'm like the white trash of gaming. But the reliance on a handheld map, guns jamming in the middle of shootouts, taking pills for your malaria, allies getting permanently killed, the fact that death results in you having to go all the way back to the last safe house. Horror. These mechanics might sound annoying, and that's because they are, but they really sell the idea that this world is unforgiving. Far Cry 2 is, after all, the Dark Souls of first-person shooters. This in turn transforms the core gameplay into stories about struggling to get to your destination. The barrage of enemies on your path, whipping out the map to make sure you're going the right way, repairing your car after a firefight, crouching in the bushes to avoid enemies, and my personal favorite, being halfway to your destination only to get fucking ran over. In the Far Cry games that followed, there were a lot of quality of life changes that made the games more accessible. You could sprint for way longer, you could mark enemies, stealth became more viable, you could have more freedom in how you arranged your loadout. These changes were objectively great, but took away the texture that 2 had. This is where my biggest problem with Far Cry 2 arises. The bullshit quest is technically optional. You can just skip the journey across the unforgiving world by taking one of the 5 fast travel points. For the first few hours, I didn't even know there was fast travel. This game was forged in the dark ages of the 2000s, so I just assumed that fast travel wasn't a thing yet. I just assumed that I had to utilize every tool at my disposal in order to survive the gauntlet. But then, about halfway through the game, I saw this little icon.
Hello there.
Now, after my understanding of how bullshit this game is, did I use it? Surely I didn't fall for the temptation to use fast travel.
What are you, fucking stupid?
Of course I used it. This is like being a homeless guy in a Mr. Beast video. But what this get out of jail free card did was essentially turn the hostile world into a joke. It's not just that the game became easier, it's that the world's imposing presence faded. What originally defined Far Cry 2 to me was its hostility. The obtuse mechanics, the narrative, hell, even the aged visuals added a certain roughness. But the inclusion of this one feature dismantles that idea. I could just ignore the fast travel and play the game the way God intended, which is to get insta-killed by a jeep going 10 miles an hour. But how could I possibly go back now? I mean, have you seen it out there?
Have you seen what it's like out there, Murray?
After knowing what kind of rabid man-eating jeeps exist out there, there's no way I'm gonna intentionally sabotage myself. That's like purposely breaking your legs because you like the struggle. But that original gameplay loop, prepping, trekking, arriving, is really fun. By cutting that out of the game, you're left with something significantly more generic. It's still a great first-person shooter, but the world gets left behind. The best place to set a hard game is in a hostile world. It's a lot easier for me to become immersed inside a brutal world if it's simultaneously kicking my ass. It's the classic show don't tell rule. Telling me that a world is dangerous is one thing, but actually getting me to feel that danger makes me blush.
I am about 50% more into you now.
Even after I spent my diamonds on guns and ammo upgrades, I was still shedding droplets of sweat during the combat encounters. The game had the bones, it had the look, but by subtracting the annoyance, the difficulty, it becomes harder to take that world seriously. It's also just hilarious that the fast travel in this game is supposed to be some kind of tour bus. You're telling me that never once in this war-torn country the bus ever gets held up or attacked by either of the factions? I mean, that would at least add a level of suspense or risk to using the fast travel. Could you imagine if Mordor had tourists going around visiting the landmarks? On your right, you will see Death and Despair, and on your left, you will see... The world of Far Cry 2 doesn't have too much to offer outside of fucking bullshit, goddamn. There's weapons and blood diamond missions, which are directly tied to the original game loop of prepping, trekking, arriving. There aren't any weirdos for you to run into like in Red Dead, and there isn't striking imagery to observe like in Fallout. The intense struggle is the best thing this world has to offer. I understand the urge to skip over boredom. Most open worlds are about as interesting as a Star Wars rant video, but skipping over the challenge is just, I don't know how else to say it, but bad game design. Like, imagine if you just had the option to skip the bosses in Dark Souls 3.
Skip. But when does this game get fucking good?
I know that's probably an extreme example, but you get the idea. Cutting out a crucial part of a game damages the overall experience. It hurts, really it does. Ending the video like this? I mean, out of Ubisoft's downright impressive catalog of mediocrity, Far Cry 2 is one of the only two Ubisoft games that I actually enjoy playing, and a part of that is the game's relentless personality. But I'd be lying if I said that Far Cry 2 was completely that. Because at the end of the day, it just became another generic open world game, skipping the adventure and getting straight to the destination. Quality of life can only go so far before it becomes a detriment to style. Which is why in my next video, I'll be advocating for the banning of modern medicine. Thanks for watching.